Hey folks, welcome back once again to Indaba Africa. This is Chris coming to you live from central Pennsylvania. Well, today on Sunday, hopefully it's a lovely Sunday for you guys. The weather is quite sunny here in central Pennsylvania, in the heartland of Pennsylvania, sandwiched in between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, the sane part of the state, central Pennsylvania. Lovely weather outside. All the temperatures starting to climb. Humidity is going up with it. So got a little bit of exercise in this morning. You see me fresh from a shower. Check it out. There you go. Anyway, so my guest today on a special feature on the Sunday program is Rion Lerm, who's an ecologist, and he's a co-founder of hopefully I'll pronounce this correctly, the Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation. We're going to bring him on here in just a second. He's going to talk to us about that. That's located up near the Kruger National Park in South Africa. All right, folks, so with that, I'm going to bring Rion in, and if you've got questions in the chat, feel free to ask him. We'll do our best to get to them. And just a second. There he is. Welcome. Rion, you're on screen.
Hi, thanks. Hi, welcome.
Dude, where are you at? I love that background. It's like awesome, like you're in the mountains or forest somewhere.
Yeah. So it is the mountains. It's actually Mariepskop. It is a part of the Drakensberg Mountains in South Africa. However, I must say most of what you see behind me is actually exotic alien plants and vegetation that don't belong there. But yeah, it's one of our highest peaks, if not the highest in Limpopo province, which is the most northern province of South Africa. But yeah, this is actually taken from a drone. I've been flying some drones with some of the work that I do, and yeah, that photograph's been taken from the sky, not from me standing on the ground. Yeah, so that's not the Kruger National Park, what it looks like.
Is that a DJI drone? What kind of drone do you have?
Yeah. That's DJI. We got a Phantom for work, a DJI Phantom 3 Advanced a couple of years ago, and we've been employing it to do a couple of projects, mostly looking at vegetation and landscape changes over time. Yeah.
These are really, in many respects, now, of course, I know this for many years, of course, in the military, I'm dealing with them, but it's really, in many respects, been a game changer when it comes to a lot of things, to agronomy, to ecology, to land management, all sorts of things. I'm talking about drones specifically.
Yeah, no, it definitely has. In South Africa, we've had a bit of a setback with legislation and stuff, but worldwide, I mean, I think the challenge has definitely been in the science sector. To try and get employed in science. There's been a bunch of amazing scientific projects, which is my focus and my interest mostly on drones. So yeah, it's an amazing technology that can be employed on so many spheres of society, it's really exciting, and for me it's a privilege to be involved with, especially from a work side. Flying drones, planning the missions, and collecting the data. I mean, that's what excites me is data collection.
Yeah, no, as an intelligence officer, I was involved in early UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle drone programs, going back to the days of the Pioneer 30-some years ago, seeing the utility of them. But for me, one of the aspects that people overlook, although it's growing in notoriety now, but one of the aspects that people just pass right by is the utility of photography. The aerial photography from these things. These platforms can be amazing, takes amazing photographs. You'd never get the angles and the perspectives otherwise, so it's really cool.
No, it is. It's amazing. It's kind of, we have satellites, and we've got Google Maps and Google satellites, and the resolution is great, but you can just not see people. And then you've got drones, and you've got, on smaller areas, you can see details up to the leaves of plants and stuff, and there have been some studies actually where they've actually identified different plant species from drone photographs taken from the top. So it's amazing. And then obviously in the agricultural sector, it's been more of an application side of things, applying herbicides or applying pesticides rather in the agricultural sector. So it's been employed so much. But yeah, obviously it's got its roots in military and then defense.
Yeah. Well, we used to have to rely on things like Landsat for water management from above and pay, millions of dollars for imagery. And now anybody can go buy a Chinese-made Phantom and lock it to their smartphone, fly it out there, and do water management. Particularly a place like South Africa, which has a shortage of water. You can do very serious water management just by looking at with the tributaries, the sources, and what's happening from above. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think the main challenge is, I still use Landsat and Sentinel, some of the newest satellites for Earth observations purposes. But, drones specifically, there is a bit of a trade-off. We can do only smaller areas with drones because we're mostly limited by things like battery power, line of sight, things like that. Legislation, obviously, which includes things like line of sight. but yeah, it is definitely been a game changer, and it's been such a privilege to be involved with it. But yeah, Landsat and some of the newest satellites, so the resolution, you know, the amount of detail you can see from space on satellite imagery that's freely available is becoming more and more commonplace these days. And
No,
Google is making it freely available for us as well.
well, yeah, freely available to use, Sen, but there is a cost to using it. But yeah,
There's somewhere there will be a cost. There's somewhere there will be a cost. There'll always be a cost somewhere.
yeah, but
Yeah, even if it's not on from our side, it might be from the consumer side. Yeah.
well, it's like GPS. I mean, the whole world moves on GPS, and you're welcome because we pay billions of dollars to put that in space for military use, and we've made available to civilians. But I mean, without GPS, modern navigation and a lot of logistic systems simply wouldn't work. But this isn't a show about drones. But I will say before we get away is that the limitations on battery with things like the Phantom and other drones, that's true. Also, states imposing legislation. I have to put a sticker and a registration number now on my drone, and you can't fly over people's homes, which is reasonable to respect people's privacy. But they've codified it in law, and every time they codify in law, it's like, look, I know how to behave. I wasn't, flying over bikini tops on people's pools in the backyards, that sort of thing. So
No.
I don't need laws to tell me, but it's almost like there's another restriction, like, oh, what can I do? So, but I will say this: those restrictions don't apply to things like Global Hawk, which flies at such a high altitude for many, many hours.
No, exactly.
Listen, so
Yeah, but yeah,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
we have to abide by it, and yeah, each country is different. It's often a challenge for scientists and researchers from other countries going to a new country, flying drones. They don't know the legislation, can get into trouble. So yeah, we try and walk the straight and narrow, and even if we have to, then fly as a hobbyist and stay within those parameters. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So this isn't a show about drones, but I did want to ask one more question about your backdrop there. You did mention something which is actually important, and it's tied to ecology here. You mentioned invasive species. So whether they're introduced intentionally or they get there by happenstance. So most of the vegetation behind you in that photograph you said are alien species.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you look at the mountain area there, when it gets a little bit more ragged and more inaccessible, I mean, when we look at that area up there, that's probably a little bit more indigenous, a native species from South Africa. But this is basically this is remnants of forestry. These trees are planted, blue gums mostly, pine trees from obviously exotic from your parts of the world and other parts of the world in Australia, for example. And left unchecked, unmanaged, uncontrolled, that they do spread. I mean, we all know that an invasive animal or an invasive plant, when it comes, when it gets or it lands up in another country or another continent, it's got no natural predators there. And, for those reasons, they seem to proliferate very, very, very easily. And then measures are taken to bring things like biological control over. And there's chemical control. And for some of our water weeds, our aquatic plants, which, by the way, in South Africa, we've got also a massive issue with aquatic alien invasive weeds. They need to even be controlled manually by hand, by labor. So, yeah, unfortunately, but it's still nonetheless, there are some lovely, pristine vegetation parts, Afromontane forest, hosting some unique bird species, some lovely small mesomammals, some of the larger predators, things like leopards, but some of the smaller carnivores as well, things like caracal, which is equivalent to the lynx in the States and Canada. So, looking at that picture, it looks beautiful, but you need to have some context. And so, yeah, it's a lovely part of the province and of the country, Maritzburg area. But it just goes to show that when, alien vegetation is not controlled, it can get out of hand. And it's actually a massive problem across South Africa. And it encompasses various plant species.
Yeah, no, it's a problem all over the entire planet. We have it here in many respects. Of course, famously in Australia, the introduction of rabbits, what a disaster that was for the Australian outback. But here in the U.S., we have zebra mussels that found their way into the Great Lakes. We have the Asian carp that are trying to get through the Great Lakes and get into the Mississippi River Delta, which would be devastating because they wipe out native indigenous species, which are a source of billions of dollars of angling tourism, as well as the health and welfare of the river system. All kinds of plant invasive species. The nutria, what a pest that thing is. It's just crazy how, as you said, when you get to another location, there's no natural predators, how the whole ecosystem can be thrown out of balance by invasive species.
For sure, it's a massive problem, and there are departments and government departments and dedicated to dealing with these taxa. For example, when we're on fish at the moment, things like bass, can cause devastation to native fish species. Things like trout, a popular angling fish in South Africa. It's a lovely sport fish, a freshwater sport fish. I myself enjoy doing trout fishing and stuff, but in certain parts of South Africa, when they escape and they manage to enter some of our indigenous rivers, I mean, it's devastating to some endemic, fish that only occur in certain regions in the whole world. When these things like trout and small and largemouth bass get into these systems, it's devastating to indigenous species. And it can be a massive battle. And if you don't act quickly, I mean, you can easily wipe out sections and air regions and cause local extinctions.
Well, excuse me. We haven't even got to your introduction of yourself. We'll get to that in a moment as the audience is growing here. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. But before I do, there's actually a really good question here from the Citizen Guardian. He says, has Rion seen the ecosystem doing any better due to the COVID-19 lockdowns? In other words, people unable to get out and about, at least legally, during this. Has that had a beneficial impact on the environment?
I think definitely. I mean, CO2 has dropped by a substantial amount globally. And just people staying off the streets. There's been a lot of reports about animals coming back into towns and things like that. But there is no doubt that, the less disturbance there is, the more animals tend to move closer towards people and stuff. So there's no doubt about it. We've seen it in our own town where some of the areas adjacent to where I stay actually, it almost seems like it becomes renaturalized, but not in terms of a whole ecosystem being redone, obviously. I mean, that takes yonks. But things like animals starting to come in because there are just much less movement. People are restricted. Vehicles are restricted. There have been some reports on things of animals have now been seen in areas where they've never been seen before. Yeah, some of those are true, some of them are not. But the lockdowns have had a positive impact on wildlife in that sense in certain areas, but a negative impact on other areas because things like, for example, poaching has increased substantially globally because of lockdown. Environmental officials and things have lost their jobs. They're not able to travel anymore and things like that. And poaching has increased, and we've picked up on it as well. And I am picking up on it as well on social media. The poaching is increasing, and so some of our wildlife are being impacted negatively in that regard. Mostly our meso animals, duikers, smaller buck, smaller antelope, smaller carnivores. And then obviously, let's not forget those domestic animals that do get out. They also bear the brunt of increased snare setting and the increases in poaching.
Okay, excellent. So that's a great question, Citizen Guardian, and a great answer. I appreciate it, Rion. Okay, so here we are now. So I'd like for you to tell folks a little bit about yourself. The description about Rion is below the video. Just look down there. You can see it, learn a little bit about him, and what he does. But tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got where you're at, and then after that, we'll get into the Phalaborwa. Is that pronounced correctly, Phalaborwa?
Yeah, perfect, okay. Perfect. Double thumbs up.
The Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation. We'll get into that, but tell us a little bit about yourself so people know. And before you do that, Grobler, I'm not gonna do this in Afrikaans. Jade Grobler just gave a super sticker, 70 Rand for #1 fan. Well, thanks. I got a new #1 fan. I didn't even know that. Or is that Rion's?
Cool.
Maybe that's Rion's #1 fan.
First fan ever.
All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks. Yeah, so I mean, I think most people that develop a love for the environment, love for sciences, love for conservation, looking after people, being a veterinarian, whatever, I think it starts from an early age. It's not the type of thing that suddenly comes across your path. Wow, I'm in love with trees. I want to know more about them. It doesn't work like that. And the same for me, no different for me. I've been going to Kruger National Park since the age of 9 months. My folks took me there, brought upon by their friends who introduced them to Kruger National Park. And during that time, so this is since I was obviously a baby, and then almost every year we've gone at least once to the world-renowned Kruger National Park. And so the park and this protected area in particular has a very special place in my heart. And I've been privileged enough to go there throughout my school years, throughout my primary school and my high school years. And then obviously, when you grow up in a system like that, such an immense system. I mean, Kruger Park is 2 million hectares in size. It's massive, 20,000 square kilometers. If you grow up in a system and you travel it extensively, you do develop a love, and you do start wishing and hoping that one day, you would actually have a job in this place. And those were my aspirations as well. And today I'm sitting in a privileged position where I'm actually doing research projects inside and outside Kruger National Park. So yeah, it started mostly with birds. With my undergraduate studies and stuff, it developed into the botanical side of things, plants and trees and things like that. Well, I developed quite an affinity for the Latin names and, the Latin language with regards to natural history and stuff. And here I am today, working for a government organization. We do long-term environmental monitoring. And partly we do research projects, and we collect long-term climatological data and meteorological data for society, for public. My job is funded by you, the South Africans. But then we started let me backtrack a little bit. During my research projects inside and outside of protected areas, I met my friend Eugene Trotsky, and I had to meet him because he carried a rifle. And that's something that's actually quite important when you walk in a Big Five area and you work in a Big Five area where there are big and hairies, and as one of my university lecturers used to call them, spijkerbekken, teeth that, mouths that have teeth like this. And, Eugene and our paths crossed a couple of years ago. We've spent probably close to 100 hours or so in the bush, him basically protecting me against that odd occasion, which has happened basically only twice out of 100 hours, that something does want to get upset with us, and we had to tell it, whoa, stop, don't do that, otherwise you're going to get hurt. And it's been just a massive privilege, and from that, because we have this, both of us have this love and passion for natural history, we started doing a bit of community projects. We created a Facebook group called the Urban Wildlife Awareness Phalaborwa, which is basically there to serve the local Phalaborwa community with any advice regarding wildlife and natural history. Mm-hmm. And then we said to ourselves, we're starting to get involved in some bigger projects now that happen over a couple of months. I'm sure we will be talking about that very soon. And we said we need to start something a little bit more formal. And we're busy now in the process of starting a non-profit company called the Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation. You can find us on Facebook for the moment. You can just search for us, PNHF. And that is so that we can, just to have a bit of more of a formal system to get some funding in, so we could tackle some of these bigger projects, anti-poaching projects, regarding our local environment, but it is also growing in the area that we respond to is becoming quite large. But basically, this stems from us giving something back to the community. This is the type of thing done after hours on a voluntary basis.
So very quickly, can you tell us a little about your educational background? Obviously, you must have some sort of training in this. You don't just stumble into this sort of activity.
Yeah. So I studied nature conservation at Tshwane University of Technology. I studied my national diploma. I was privileged enough to do my third year, which is my practical year when we study a diploma in South Africa. I did it in Zimbabwe, ex-Rhodesia. But when it was called Zimbabwe, it was obviously not prior 1981. And it was mostly, on a massive conservancy, a wildlife conservancy called the Salve Valley Conservancy. It's huge. It's 365,000 hectares. It used to be one of the biggest cattle farms in Africa. That's now under pure conservation and hunting, sustainable utilization, and it's a massive wildlife area. So we did our practical year there, and the reason behind that is, my wife. So my wife and I met at university undergraduate years, and we did our practical year in Zim because she had some family there. But that was great. I mean that added to my already big interest and passion, even through the studies and prior to that in birds and stuff. And there I got involved with monitoring raptor nests, and we did a leopard monitoring project and all kinds of cool stuff. From then onwards, we came back to South Africa. There's been elections through Zimbabwe, all kinds of hairy story. I almost said airy fairy, but it's everything but, unfortunately, that we went through during the 2008 May elections in Zim. It wasn't pleasant. So we came out briefly, but we were involved in some scuffles and stuff there. But we came back after that year, finished our diploma successfully, and then started our honors degrees. Excuse me. And we started in KwaZulu-Natal. Yeah, we were employed by the university and in a community project as assistant managers. And yeah, there we did environmental education, educating local communities, about 10 high schools around a provincial nature reserve, doing environmental educations in these schools, basically, trying to make the poor understand and the rural understand that it's always a challenge for me to comprehend. I always tell the story is that the first day I drove in there, you drive down the fence line and you look on your left-hand side and there are trees taller than that side of the fence line. And it's obviously because of wood harvesting. And, when I just started out, I was a young student, I didn't have really a lot of perspective about life and stuff. And I realized that I had a bit of animosity, and it was a bit of inner conflictions and convictions and all kinds of things going on. It's like, these people are cutting down the trees. And, years afterwards, I said to them, starting to realize and, learning more about the circumstances they have to live in, you know what, go ahead. You have to look after your families. Not all of you can afford electricity. It is okay with me if you cut down the trees outside there. But I do expect you to understand the importance of a nature reserve and protected area, because you want your kids, you might not think so now, but you do want your kids to one day see a black rhinoceros, see a white rhinoceros, see a nyala, whatever the animal or the plant might be for that matter. Up in that part of KwaZulu-Natal, there's quite a bit of endangered plants in different plant units, vegetation units in that part of KwaZulu-Natal.
No, I would love to see a duiker. I've never seen a duiker in the wild. I've seen a clipspringer, but never seen a duiker.
Yeah, no, you must. Yeah. So one of your problems, Chris, is that you have never been to the Kruger National Park.
This is true.
You'll get an overload of everything, and you must really, and anyone on this channel watch who's only heard about the Kruger National Park and excuse me, I'm fine. Say to themselves, they have to visit a place. You have to visit Kruger National Park. There's no doubt about it. Doesn't matter what you hear or whatever. Just get yourself over to Kruger National Park. It is amazing. It's an amazing area. It's an amazing, covering such a small, such a short distance and a relatively small area. Even though people say, it's the size of some countries, Kruger National Park. The fact of the matter is, because of it's of that size, it contains these various different habitats and these different plants and different animals. It is really something you have to experience. But yeah, KwaZulu-Natal, any part of South Africa, any part of the world, for that matter, is amazing in its own regard. So we were up at KZN doing environmental education. There's duiker, and there's actually one of the endangered small mammals related to the duiker called the Suni. Up in that part of the world as well. Very skulking, small little antelope, not very big. Oh gosh, it might stand just taller than your laptop. So that's the Suni. I did my honors degree project there on birds in the mountainous area, and my wife did on spotted hyena, which was great. And from then onwards, we went back to university. We did some master's degrees. Once again, myself focusing on the birds in the Kalahari, which is our arid part of South Africa, and it's the dominant the dominant part of the savanna biome of Botswana is the Kalahari, the dry sandy areas with little grass and a couple of trees, but the trees are amazing. I did a study on birds there where I was looking at the impact of various land uses, which is my interest, to look at bird communities. So my work, I'm a community ecologist, so I'm interested in what animal and bird communities, but any animal, reptiles, dragonflies specifically, there's a couple of taxa which I specialize in, and how the environment determines how they are shaped. How many different species are there? How many of them are there? That's the type of stuff that interests me. So we did our master's degree. My wife did hers on the lion in the Kruger National Park. She used the data from their GPS collars that were fitted, and she actually looked at their movements about I think about 5 or 10 in the northern part of Kruger National Park and 5 or 10 prides in the southern part of Kruger National Park, and how they use space, how they use water, distances from roads, what type of vegetation. And we actually visited, it was mostly a desktop study, not a lot of field work involved, because obviously the data is already collected, mostly from the collars. And we spoke about satellites, and in my work today as well, a lot of the environmental variables today we can derive from satellites, can tell us, is there water or is there not water, so we don't always need to go into the field just to do some ground truthing. But yeah, we went to visit some of those sites of lion that were visited frequently, and it's eerie, it's scary. We obviously have an armed guard with us, but it's scary. You've seen on the data that this specific area is highly frequented by lions, and you want to go see what this place looks like, to try and get an idea of the plants and what it looks like as close to water and stuff. We had a fun. And
in Botswana, in the northeast of the Okavango Delta, they have Savudi, and Savudi is a place where all you have are hard stands out there for campsites, and it's a place where the lions come right up to your tent every night. So if you want to,
that's amazing.
You want to risk yourself, that's a place to do it. But it's interesting you talk about range of big predators. So here in the States, of course, the range depends on the density of prey. If you don't have a lot of prey, they have to cover a lot more ground, of course. But here in the States, we get Ito Gold just subscribed. Thank you, Ito. Ito was on the channel last few days, so thank you for this prescription. As the zombie climbs across the Mahalisberg. By the way, the backdrop for my scenes is the Mahalisberg Mountains near Olifant's Neck, close to Rustenburg. And so you've got some non-native pine species in front of a veld there.
I saw that.
And you've got I've got the Mahalisberg behind it. But I have this zombie. When people subscribe or become members of the channel, it runs across, climbs the Mahalisberg ridgeline. So anyway, but
okay, now I know as well why is it a zombie. That's cool. Yeah. I'll keep a lookout for the trend that's going across there and the pattern it's following.
Exactly. But so here in the States we look at of course they have lots of names: mountain lion, catamount. There's cougars. There's all the same. Slight difference in species, but pretty much the same cat all over the Americas. But here in the U.S., we see massive range differences of what you see in the Rocky Mountains as opposed to different parts of the country where these big cats have to travel much further afield to get prey. But they seem to find their range and they don't overpopulate. Their biggest problem, of course, is intrusion by Homo sapiens. We tend to tread on their spaces quite a bit.
I think it's very similar with leopard in South Africa. Yeah. I think it's very similar. It's a leopard is this cat that's also kind of fighting for space, because it kind of knows no boundaries. And there's a bunch of conservation NPOs trying to protect them in various parts of South Africa. Yeah, so it seems very similar. Yeah, you obviously, having traveled extensively across Africa, Chris, you reckon probably mountain lion, leopard. I mean, that's you think it's a good comparison?
No, I do. As far as behavior and character, mountain lions tend to like to be lonely and operate on their own. You see cheetahs are lonely, but when they have their cubs with them, they're really close by. But with mountain lions, you really see their little ones, and you see them hanging out by themselves in a tree, just waiting to pounce on a prey. And I think the size, the behavior, it is similar to a mountain lion. But leopards are amazing. We were in the Okavango Delta one time, and of course, with the little tour groups, that are riding around out there, the radio message goes out, there's a leopard over at this spot, and suddenly, there's like 8 cars of tourists that rock up underneath this tree where this leopard's just up there relaxing, watching it. But leopards are pretty amazing creatures. Hey, so you've started your PhD, you're working on your doctorate now. What's that all about?
Yeah. So amongst all the other stuff going on, and apart from PNHF, I started my PhD now, recently accepted into one of these South African universities. Basically, we're going to be looking, I'm going to be looking with the assistance of obviously co-workers and some supervisors, Sandparks, BirdLife South Africa involved, my organization as well. The organization I work for, my employer, SAON, South African Environmental Observation Network. Check them out at www.saon.ac.za. We are going to be looking at how are the bird communities structured inside and outside of Kruger National Park? Now, the cool thing about it is I don't really have to set much of a foot from my office because we're using citizen science data collected by South Africans or anyone who contributed bird-related sightings to the South African Bird Atlas Project at the University of Cape Town at the Animal Demography Unit or the Biodiversity Institute. And I'm going to be using that data, looking at that, taking that data, using quite a bit of satellite data and some of the environmental variables, water, vegetation, greener seasonality, things like that associated with the environment, precipitate rainfalls, temperature and stuff like that, and be comparing it to the bird communities inside and outside of Kruger National Park and see what this is all about. It hasn't been done yet before, and the project has got good coverage inside Kruger National Park. A recent project achieved complete coverage of the Kruger National Park, so every single little block inside Kruger Park has been surveyed, even those areas that are not accessible to people, and it's because that specific project had access to those areas to be able to survey the birds and see, okay, what is here? And now, the benefits show now, and a student is able to actually do his doctorate using this data. And obviously using some, as I mentioned before, satellite data, but then obviously employing definitely some fancy statistical software packages and try and form associations and build models and all kinds of this and that type of stuff that's difficult to communicate to society, but it is necessary to communicate that type of science to society. Very important, actually.
Let me do a little bit of housekeeping here very quickly. So I got folks, first off, moderators, no mercy today for those misbehaving in the chat. I have removed one person from the channel permanently. Nothing to do with you, my guest. It's people trolling other people in the chat. So yeah, it's nothing to do with you, Rion. But no mercy for that. And if you have to ask why you're timed out, then clearly you don't know good behavior. So I'll leave it at that. But folks, you're listening to Chris White Africa on the Indaba Africa channel here on YouTube. This is Chris from Central Pennsylvania. Welcome to the channel on a Sunday special feature with my guest Rion Lerm, who is an ecologist and a PhD candidate in South Africa, works adjacent to the Kruger National Park. We're talking about conservation and ecology in South Africa and his experiences. And I'm going to get to a few comments. First off, I want to welcome Fiona Timms has just become a member at the recruit team member level for become a member of Chris White Africa. Fiona, as I do with all new members, I render you a genuine salute. So there you go. Thank you for becoming a member, and I've seen you recently on the channel, and you've been contributing a lot in the chat. So thanks for becoming a member. I appreciate that. And Luis, now this is interesting. This is a German name with an umlaut over the A, which I've never seen before. Louis Faber. Normally I'd be Faba, but it says Faber. It's just subscribed. Well, thank you for that, Louis. I don't know if you're watching the stream now or watching one of my prepared videos, but if you're watching the stream, welcome. Thank you for joining. Now, the comments that people had, I want to share with you, Rion. So Fiona said a short while ago that they have a 5,000-acre cattle ranch in the Berg, and about a third of it is absolutely infested and overrun with wattle, gum, pinus, patula, bugweed, and American bramble. I think that's American bramble. I'm not familiar with that weed, but
yeah, maybe European. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds like quite a big cattle ranch, depending where it's at. I suppose in South Africa, that big cattle ranch, but in Wyoming, they'd be pikers. That'd be nothing.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So she's probably is she concerned about the impacts on the ranch? Obviously.
I would imagine, yeah. Fiona, if you got a concern about that, share it with us, and we'll bring that back in the chat too. Carrie von Skalvik said that such awesome work that Rion is doing. There you go, thumbs up, Rion. You got a fan there.
Thank you, Carrie.
And then Lynn asked a question. Please ask Rion, how are the temperatures in Phalaborwa? When I lived there, it was excruciatingly hot.
Okay, let me comment on that. This is a difficult one. It is excruciatingly hot. No difference. Things have not changed here. I've only stayed here since 2014. It's still hot. Yeah, at the moment, I mean, these days, it's not even proper spring yet, and it's 26 degrees Celsius, high 70s in Fahrenheit, I believe. So yeah, it's still hot. It's still hot, but the winters are lovely because of it.
So I've just got one thing to say that in response, Rion. Obviously, you haven't known me very long. You don't realize that I am a Viking by descent, and I'm not a big fan of the heat. And so when you start talking 26, that's about my threshold for a maximum. This 30, 35, 40 nonsense. When I was living in Saudi Arabia, that was excruciatingly miserable for me. Did not like it. I do not like the sun. This light pink skin here does not like that ultraviolet radiation, and so I try to avoid it when possible. But if you want me to come to Kruger, it's going to have to be in the winter. Now, is that a decent time to see wildlife or no?
Yeah, it is. It is because you don't have grass crank, so you can see them. Yes, it is. Kruger, winter, great time. It's not nice and green, but you can see wildlife, so it's good. It's good. If you're going to come in summer during the rain, which is, let's say, oh gosh, my seasons are meteorological, so they run from July to June, so that's kind of useless. But basically, you know, starting from October to about March, April, that's summer, that's a rainfall season, and it's nice and lush and green, but you can't see anything. All the trees have got leaves. The grass is standing this tall, specifically in the areas where there's good game watching. The grass is this tall. So yeah, coming to Kruger National Park in the winter time is your best bet. And yeah, obviously the climate is great. It's not excruciatingly hot, especially if you're in the northern parts of the park. And the humidity is obviously non-existent.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that winter, if you want to see something actually happen, because there's no vegetation, you can see for distances. That's great. So I was in Madikwe in the wintertime. And we followed a pride of lions stalk Gemsbok and take it down. And I watched a pride of lions eat an entire Gemsbok in less than 10 minutes. It was bizarre and wild. We were like, I don't know, 3 meters away from them while they're devouring the Gemsbok. It was, whoa, something else. That was in Madikwe. Of course, that's kind of canned. I mean, the wildlife runs around on its own, but it is a reformed ranches that they fenced in together. But nonetheless, pretty nice. They've got quite a good setup up there in Madikwe. Some nice lodges. And it's not too far from civilization, so people can get out and appreciate wildlife a little bit without driving for days to get to Kruger.
Yeah, no, they're popular. You know, they're one of the more popular ranches in southern Africa. Yeah, good place to visit. I believe so.
So let's talk about Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation. So, folks, if you're curious, there is a link in the video below this to their Facebook page, and you mentioned it briefly already. But tell us, Sammy, what's the real intent? Is this about conservation? Is it about protecting species? Is it about protecting the environment itself, or making people aware of the environment, spreading knowledge, or is it all those things?
It's kind of all of it. You know, so my work is you know, I started out and I thought I was a conservationist, you know, when I was studying and stuff. And then I started developing interest in science, and that's my work now. Apart from some of the technical stuff I do at work with maintaining research infrastructure. But then, you know, with this knowledge and the knowledge of my friend, co-founder Eugene Trotsky, you know, I thought, you know, we thought it's giving back, you know. So we combine our skills. He's an excellent tracker. He knows animal behavior and the natural history of some of our bigger wildlife as well, specifically, very, very, very well. And, you know, we started giving back, and what it started coming down to is we started getting involved in it's definitely the majority of conservation projects. And that's something I've been out of for some time, and which I'm quite enjoying to get back into, because there's a difference between science and conservation. You know, conservation is kind of the application side of it. And science, you know, you're kind of telling you, listen, our data shows that this bird or this animal or this habitat is going pear-shaped. Things are going pear-shaped. It's going extinct. It's diminishing. It's going down in size. And you've got conservationists who actually put that information into practice. And so it's nice for me to be back involved with this type of thing. And yeah, it is education as well. You know, one of the things, you know, this is also a platform where we share our experience and our knowledge with people. So I've done a tree identification workshop for some of the local people. We've done a dragonfly identification photographic outing. There's actually a citizen science project called Udunata Map, you know, that the BDI is responsible for. You know, the idea is to try and get updated distributions of dragonflies in South Africa. And, you know, we took a bunch of folks out to photograph some dragonflies. We contribute to these citizens science projects quite a bit. But Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation has very recently actually become very conservation oriented. Snare removal operations quite a bit, and then environmental education as well.
You know, you mentioned snares. When I was a kid, I grew up, we had trapping here in the U.S., and I grew up thinking nothing of the cruelty of traps, you know, snare traps, the metal ones, snap on. But as a kid, I realized when I went out to collect the animals that had been caught in traps, that's pretty cruel and unnecessary, no need for it. There are more effective ways to do that. So, got kind of away from that, but and haven't had any traps since I was a teenager.
Yeah, no. So poaching is a massive issue in South Africa. I mean, obviously the well-known is.
I wasn't poaching. It was hunting on my own land. I'm just saying that the approach.
It was hunting. It was hunt. Yeah. So you did hunting. I think you were monitoring that. Yeah. Oh gosh, it's difficult to. Oh gosh, when you say it like that, difficult to make the distinction.
Yeah.
Actually, even though we have to somehow, I'm not going to go into defining hunting, poaching, but I think what it comes down to is, from our side, it's illegal trespassing. That's
Yeah.
what it goes in line with. It's basically illegal what we're doing. I think that's the difference between. The difference could be probably the simplest way of putting it is between being illegal and legal. Hunting versus poaching, even using the same method. So the poaching thing is illegal, and it's quite a bit uncontrolled. The most common form of poaching is what everyone around the world knows, and about the rhino horn. So I'm not going to go there. We're not involved with that type of stuff yet. We do collaborate with those people, with the people who launched one of the largest rhino dehorning projects in the world recently. It's the Baluli Associated Private Nature Reserve. So we do work with them on poaching, anti-poaching operations. The thing is with poaching and snare removal, I think it just comes down to the fact that, the big thing about Phalaborwa is we are a town that are adjacent to Kruger National Park. We are literally on the boundary. Any overspill wildlife or things that come into our area, have got a threat. There's a threat of drawing all these animals into this area and into town, and you are poaching it and removing it, and you're just drawing more and more and more because of the void that is left with poaching. More animals are being pushed out of the territories and home ranges inside Kruger National Park, and maybe getting through and moving in here and getting poached and stuff. And I think once again, the big thing around Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation is that it's local. The focus is local. We are in a privileged town that is on the edge of the Kruger National Park, as you've mentioned before, and that means that we have a lot of wildlife around us, and we could probably have much more wildlife around us. Now it is very difficult. I mean, in times like this now, where there is COVID and stuff, a man cannot feed his family. What do you do? Yeah. I do not hold it against him. I think the issues come with commercialized poaching. Subsistence poaching is usually not an issue for most people, except if it's done en masse. But it's usually as a result of a lack of another part of society that is happening, unless there is some cultural or religious connotation to it, which is sometimes the case with some of our wildlife and why some of the animals are being poached, but not all the time. So commercialization is an issue. But the things that we've been in, one of the big projects that we've been involved with recently now is the poaching. It's so untargeted, and the problem is what we have. You've got predators that are also getting caught in snares and things. You've got animals. You've got domestic animals. We've recently posted on some of our Facebook. I think our Facebook group, we've posted a domestic cat. So there's even domestic animals are at risk of snares. And so we have launched a couple of snare removal operations around the town of Phalaborwa, but it started becoming a bigger thing. And, we have, as I've mentioned before, some of the associated private nature reserves that border Kruger National Park. There's no boundary between them and Kruger National Park. Have over the years realized an influx of snared animals, and it's actually coming from our part of the world. And so there's quite a bit of a big operation launched together with us, with the skills that Eugene and myself can offer to this organization. Us being on the ground, also launching local snare sweeps, just to try and to save some of the wildlife. We've got a massive hyena pack at the moment that we've been monitoring for the last 4 months at least. And at least 6 individuals from that pack has had snares, and we are battling to try and get the snares off. And it's nice to have spotted hyenas, to be able to drive outside of your town. I mean, it's the prerogative of the people living here to drive outside of your town. It's part of the natural heritage to go and see spotted hyenas on the road. But no one wants to see it with an animal that's suffering and it's got a death sentence on its back. Yeah, I think that's that we've gotten involved in.
I think it's an important distinction. Is that the snares, the animals are suffering needlessly. There's no point in that. And it's also a lazy way to hunt. If you want to hunt something, you need to stalk it if you're going to hunt. But so a couple things on that point. And there's a super chat came in from Farmers Travels. 35 Rand says hello and goodbye. spelling goodbye as in B-U-Y, but I know the person's not for con speakers, so maybe it was just a typo, but goodbye as in you bought something. But who is the Hug-a-Bunny, or is he a real Ranger Smith? I don't know if he's trying to be cute there or not, but anyway, speaking about the trapping, Citizen Guardian says absolutely trapping is illegal for good reason. Well, Citizen Guardian, we're not typically talking about South Africa, although the discussion here is with an ecologist who's in South Africa. These topics are also about the rest of the world, and trapping is not illegal in many parts of the United States, Canada, Russia, places like that, with vast environments. What I was saying from a personal perspective, it was not illegal to use traps. When I was young on a farm, we would trap groundhog, we would trap raccoon, things like that. But after using it as a young kid, I'm like, this is just no, and I just stopped doing it. And we resorted to stalking or not hunting at all. So, but yeah, you're back to Rion's point about people who are hungry. It's kind of like I have this aversion to the concept of people hunting bushmeat. I just have real difficulty with people eating other primates. That's my first objection. But the concept of bushmeat, a lot of people do that because it's the only protein they're getting in their diets in tropical areas. And so while I don't agree with it, I understand how people resort to it. But let me get through some of the chat here real quick, Rion. So we were talking about the heat earlier. Jeff said, try India. Yeah, okay, good point. India gets pretty hot too, at least the southern part of it. And Vutsarko gave us a little feedback on the American bramble. It says rubus something. I don't know what the SPP is. The fruit spread by birds was brought into nurseries and escaped, he believed. Very thorny and evades flies and other natural areas. Okay, good point. And then you mentioned Trotsky earlier, and I thought you kept saying Trotsky. I'm like, no communist on this channel. We don't allow communists on this channel. No, I'm just kidding. But you said Trotsky. And so I see that Trotsky Wildlife Photography is in the chat. I'm going to guess that's your mate there.
That's him. He's checking in. That's him. That's
Okay.
him. So he's able to answer some questions if needs be.
And he's been doing that. He said we have around 500 species of birds in the Kruger National Park. That's impressive. Oh, by the way, so I want to ask you about Botswana. So Botswana has different types of birds in different parts of the country, does it not? For instance, in Chobe and Okavango, those are different bird species than you find, say, down in the central Kalahari of the southern part of the country. Am I correct or am I mistaken?
No, definitely. No, definitely. There are certain, there's a couple of species in Southern Africa which are occurring on the edge of Southern Africa and Zambia. So when we talk about Southern Africa, it's what most of our bird books, if you buy a bird book from the shop or, excuse me, a tree book or something like that, it includes the countries of Namibia, Botswana, Mozambique, Zimbabwe and South Africa, Lesotho and Swaziland obviously included. We've got a couple of birds that are running along the top ridge of Namibia, Botswana, which occur from there upwards, but have reached their their most southern distribution on that part of Botswana, and which means it doesn't occur anywhere southwards. Where I did my master's degree in Katu, which is a couple of, how many kilometers west of a country, of a town, not a country, a town called Kuruman. There's the southern distribution of one of the spurfowl, which is like a grouse, or it's a game bird. From there onwards, northwards, it occurs. So all animals, across the world have distributions where they stop. You don't find them further than that. It's kind of this invisible line thing. You do find it, and especially on this top part of South Africa, they always say the Zambezi River is kind of the divide of Southern Africa and the rest of Africa.
Well, you also see with big game species, the differentiate, some of them you don't see as you get to certain points there, as the environment begins to change. I suppose that's a big part of it.
Yes, no, by no doubt. I mean, the Okavango, we've got things like Siratunga, in Afrikaans, die waterkudu, and then the lechwe and things like that. I mean, they occur in the Okavango and those not south at all. Things like puku. So it's with all animals, they've got their boundaries, and it's usually associated to climate or vegetation biomes. It's plant botanically related often, and climate, temperature and rain.
It's funny you mentioned red leshwe. I was in Chobe for the first time 20 years ago, I think it was. And I had my mate take a photograph of me because it was a nice looking spot, and I didn't realize there were about 200 red leshwe standing behind me. They made nice props for the photograph. I didn't even realize they were there. There's so quiet grazing behind me.
In the water.
Yeah, it was after the photo was taken, I realized, because I turned around like, oh, that's cool. I wonder how that looks. Of course, back then I had a film camera; it wasn't digital, so I had to wait. So Tony Nagy, who's up in Canada, said the Great Lakes are in danger of invasive fish the Asian carp. Yeah, we talked about that early on, Tony, but actually I misspoke. I got it backwards. The carp are in the Mississippi, and the canals that connect the Mississippi to the Great Lakes are the danger, trying to keep them out of the
And
Great
the
Lakes.
dangers at the lakes. Okay.
Yeah. So I got it backwards. I misspoke.
Yeah.
It's they've destroyed several tributaries of the Mississippi, and they worked their way up and down the Mississippi, and they're trying to get into the Great Lakes because there's canals and locks that link the Great Lakes, because there's no natural link to the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. So there are ways to get there because man has put locks and canals in there. So they've been fighting desperately, putting electrical fences up under the water to dissuade them. But these little buggers, and they grow so rapidly and they devour everything. And they just reproduce and they crowd everything out. It's just horrible.
Because they've got no diseases. There's no fungus. There's nothing. They're kind of untouchable. Aliens, in our midst are untouchable.
And so Linda mentioned that she was wanting to ask about climate change. Let me come back to it in a second, because she said about climate change when she lived in Phalaborwa, it was like 45 degrees all the time. Yeah, that's too warm for me. Fiona, back to her 5,000-acre farm, is saying she's terrified. Removing all these is a full-time job on 5,000 acres, requiring lots of manual labor. Minimum labor laws are too high for farmers to employ many staff, plus they demand housing, food, uniforms, medical care, and the like. So it's quite a challenge for her getting rid of invasive species. And then Morton was saying Christmas Day 1983 at our camp near Shingwedzi in Kruger National Park. I don't know where that's at in the park. Recorded a temperature of 48 degrees in 1983. Not as hot as the 60 degrees they experienced in Kuwait, but it was hot enough.
Yeah. No, I mean, and this part of the world, no doubt, this part of South Africa is renowned for very hot temperatures. From here on up, going northwards towards Musina these days called, which is basically the border post between a well-known border post between Zimbabwe and South Africa. So we've had a weather station last summer. We've had probably one of our highest temperatures recorded. I think it was, it's on the Letaba River inside Kruger National Park, one of our very fancy weather stations. So I can guarantee you this value is as accurate as it will get. It was about 46.5 degrees Celsius. It's quite hot. And because of it, I mean, the battery inside the enclosure just popped. It just didn't make it. Equivalent weather station with the same type of battery in a much cooler, colder part of South Africa, more up towards the mountainous area. Actually, the same mountainous area where that's connected to this Maripskop, which is behind me. That battery's been lasting me years, but in these hot temperatures, batteries don't like it. It's a tough place to live. It's a tough place for animals, and it's a tough place for people. And some of us get used to it, and some of us don't. But yeah, the animals are used to it, and they often do better than we do.
So the Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation is a relatively recent creation, yes? Something you guys came up with recently?
Yeah.
And so
relatively, yeah.
Where do you hope to go from here? Do you hope to get people to become members or patrons of it, or raise raise finances for it, or should it just be an awareness thing that you're just going to carry forward, the two of you guys?
No, definitely. I think definitely. I mean, thus far, the majority of projects, whether it's baboon monitoring, which is starting off at the moment, trying to keep baboons out of the towns. Whether it's paying the veterinarians or whatever, in the future we would like to be able to do these things and buy specific equipment. I mean, it's one of our biggest challenges at the moment is trying to dart a hyena at night. If you put a light on them, poof, they go. So things like night vision cameras, infrared cameras, heat detection cameras, and things like that. Those are the type of instruments that we'll be able to put to good use to try and give some of the animals in our area, which we know of, who carry snares. And there are a lot. And this is a problem area along Kruger National Park, and it hasn't been attended to for quite some time. And we would like to try and provide some type of a longevity to some of these animals, especially the predators. I mean, predators perform a very important function in the ecosystem. Removing them causes all kinds of other problems. And we obviously know the importance of hyenas. And once again, being able to show your children hyenas outside of Kruger National Park, and it's quite a privilege. And I don't see why we need to allow a clan of hyenas to go extinct because of snaring, poaching incidents. I think if one can do something about it, we will. And we have been on a voluntary basis on our own cost, financial and time-wise. But it's what we love to do, and we'll continue with that. So making it, at the moment, busy with the registration of a non-profit company so that we can receive the donations, that we can receive funding. to be able to tackle more and more of these local environmental problems. Because Phalaborwa itself and the communities around here, we live in a very unique area. Because we're on the doorstep of Kruger National Park, we kind of, I feel, have an obligation towards Kruger National Park to prevent, bad stuff going into Kruger, and then the same coming here, well, not the same coming here, but the good stuff coming here, keeping it going. And that's specifically in terms of wildlife and stuff. So yeah, creating awareness as well, all kinds of projects. As Eugene mentioned, we've got a massive species list of 800 plus animals just in 25 square kilometers around this town. So we are a diversity hotspot as well. The low veld, which is this lower lying area of Kruger National Park, is called the low veld. Mm-hmm. In general, it's a very high diversity region. Now, in endemism or endemic animals are not that many, but the diversity counts for something. We've got a lot of animals down here: birds, reptiles, dragonflies. Yes. And one of the nice things about our snare removal, it benefits conservation as well, because we've got a company called Down to the Wire. Go find them on Instagram. They make these bracelets from the snares that we remove. So and that funds other conservation operations again. So those are the type of things we would like to support. And continue our work with them in the future.
So there was one question here from Lynn, and I think it's a good question because I did put the link to your Facebook page. But are you going to have a YouTube channel to maybe promote the Natural Heritage Foundation? Is that an idea in the future, or maybe a YouTube or Parler or Twitter handle as well?
We might most likely. We despite all the negative flack and whatever that social media is getting. I know Steve's been mentioning a bit about Twitter, which is a mess. I've never used it before. It's not a platform I use, but it's the type of thing we are willing to investigate. We have been approaching newspapers as well to do articles and spreading the news about us and what the work we do, and not only about the work that we do, just about the environment. Our current generation is so disconnected from nature. And and the shocking thing is, with some of the work that I do in the education outreach I do with local schools, is some of the local people that grew up in this town or around this town, they might have even been into Kruger National Park. And we've got these science programs with them with my work. And my colleague said to me, one of the activities I didn't participate in, he said to me, none of those kids could even name 5 animals that's inside Kruger National Park. So that just shows you, even a town like ourselves, and the younger generation, because of technology and it's this and it's it's a global issue. It's so disconnected from nature, and so an occasional article or in the news or in the media or social media or whatever about nature, what it's about. Look here, it is interesting. It's worth pursuing. There is a career in it. That's the type of thing we would like to advertise and get back out there. But principally, it will always be a priority for our townspeople. It will always be focused here, I think, because we live in a very special place, albeit hot.
Lynn is saying that she can help you with online marketing if you'd like. I can put you in touch with Lynn if you'd like. We can do that offline. Thanks.
Please do. Thanks, Lynn. Well, appreciate it. Thank you very much. We would like to get in contact with you.
I'll put you guys in touch. So Lynn will put you in touch with
Thanks, Chris.
Not a worry, my pleasure.
Thanks,
it's I just before we wrap up here, one thing I want to say is that you just touched on it. I find it absolutely astounding how we have to regreen the youth, and not everyone obviously, but and part of it obviously is a consequence of urbanization. But what I don't understand is that if you live in an urban area, if you have the resources, why don't you get your kids out and acclimated to the countryside, to nature? And even in cities, there's nature. Even New York City has Central Park. You can get out and experience nature. When I was a kid, I could walk out in the woods behind my house and I could identify every single species of tree. I could tell you when they came in bloom. I could tell you what kind of nuts or fruits they produced. I could tell you what kind of the timber was, when it was the best time to trim them, why you don't cut down all the trees because of erosion and the impact here. I could tell you about the health and safety of the creeks and waterways around us, and the wildlife in there, the crustaceans that you find in there, the fish that you find in there, about the mine runoff, how it damaged with the mercury and lead and such came off of mines, all of that stuff. And I didn't go to some vocational program for that. That's just from living in a rural area on a farm. I learned all those things, and they fascinated me. I mean, I'm a little embarrassed now. I walk in the woods, I'm like, okay, which species of oak is that? I don't remember.
No, but it does happen. You have to rekindle with them every so often. Otherwise, you lose touch with them, the names.
Yeah, but we used to go out when I was a kid. We, even we knew how to do this without damaging the trees. We dig up the sassafras roots to take the bark off, so that we can make sassafras tea out of that. And you obviously can't just dig roots indiscriminately because you'll kill the tree. You had to know which roots you could take, which would not harm the tree. It's kind of like tapping maple trees to get the syrup. You can't just slice them all up. So it's I find it I don't know if the word's fascinating. I guess it's a little distressing, and I understand because urbanization is a worldwide global phenomenon, and it's happening especially in Africa where people are flocking to cities. But still, I mean, it's part of our natural environment. If you don't, it's like and this is an unrelated issue, but it's here in the U.S. we have at least in the Constitution, not necessarily in every of the 50 states, but we have in the Constitution the right to keep and bear arms. And for me, when I went into the military service, I was accustomed to firearms. I'd grown up with them, used them for hunting, for target practice, for competitions and such, and for for defending property, not against people, but against predators and wildlife. But I went in the Army, and there were people who almost wet their pants when we went to the range. They were terrified of guns because they'd never been around them. Now, it's not the same comparison. What I'm saying is that there are people who are terrified of the natural environment and don't understand it and are afraid to go out in it because they've never been exposed to it. They just see it on television or on playing their Game Boy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, to combat things like industrialization and environmental degradation, if you've just got an engineer who's got some kind of a bit of a appreciation for nature and stuff, he will at least give a second glance to an area where a new mine has to be developed. Or, it's one of the biggest problems is things like mining development, unfortunately agriculture, but we all know we can't live without any of these things. But, it's all about placement and where these things are located and listening to authorities who tell you that, there might be an endangered species here. If you're placing a mine or whatever, will have an impact. And not have some political connotation or capitalism and environmentalism usually doesn't go well together. Unfortunately, it seems to be the case. But yeah, it's a problem, and it is concerning. As I said, I experienced it firsthand with some of the kids that we bring in for science programs. It's not great, and there is a global need to get back to nature again. There's been quite a bit of publications coming out now on the importance of being connected to nature, just taking your kids out of the house and out of the TV and getting yourself away from it. I mean, my wife and I, we also guilty about it. It's nice to lounge around on weekends. You've worked throughout the week, your weekend, you just want to chill. We're right next to Kruger National Park, and most people only come every so often. But it's important, I think, to our kids to just expose them. Teach them a little bit about this. Maybe your interest is in plants. Maybe your interest is in butterflies or dragonflies. Or, myself and Eugene, we do photography as well on top of these things, and that's where the gamification and the challenge of the comes in a bit when you try and photograph these things and get a good shot or build a list of how many species you've seen and stuff. But there's definitely a need. I mean, as I said, there's quite a bit of publications. Obviously, I'm not going to quote any of them. You could go and Google them. But there's a real desire and a need for we are connected with nature, and we are not disjunct. We aren't. And if it is going to be the case, and if you are going to force that, you're going to have problems in the future. And let's face it, nature and climate change and all this carbon stuff. I mean, we know where the issues are. We just need to act, and obviously everyone can do a little bit in their own way. It will make a big difference. I mean, the lockdown showed to us the reduction in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and just during the lockdowns from all the vehicles not driving around.
No, absolutely. In fact, the whole thing was turned so upside down that in May we saw oil futures, people paying $37 a barrel to get suppliers to buy their oil because they're actually paying for them to take it off their hands because otherwise the thing gets disrupted, wells get shut down, and you can't return to production. It costs more than it does to pay 37 barrels. So not only did oil go down below to $0 per barrel, people paid you $37 a barrel to take it.
That's madness.
I wish that I had storage facilities. I would have let them pay me to take all that oil off their hand for a few months.
I know. Well, fortunately, we felt it was a bit of relief for South Africans, with the drop in fuel price. Yeah. So we thankful, at least in that regard as well.
Well, Rion, listen, folks, Rion was watching one of my previous streams with a guest, and I think he got a little spooked because my guest was on for 2 hours. So we discussed this beforehand. I said, not to worry, Rion, we're not going to go for 2 hours, but we're now just a little over an hour here. While you were chatting there and sharing, we went over an hour. So I want to say, folks, you've been listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel here with my special guest on a Sunday, Rion Lerm, who is an ecologist and a PhD candidate, and we've been talking about conservation and the Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation, of which he's a co-founder. And so with that, Rion, I'm going to turn it to you and ask if you want to share anything, last thoughts, or maybe talk about impacts of climate change you want, because Lynn was asking that question, if you want to get into that, and then just wrap it up and we'll close up.
Yeah, okay, well, the impacts of climate change is kind of a global thing. Yeah, it's on all spheres. It is one thing I can tell you is it's true. It's not true. I'm not an expert on climate change. You know, I'm a biodiversity specialist and an ecologist. But yeah, I think just people need to start looking and thinking twice about the environment, exposing their kids and stuff to the environment. I think it will make a massive difference. I just see all around us, and I think if we look at news and the media and stuff, you know, the environment usually comes second. And I think if we can kind of just turn that around, it would be good. You know, if people can give a second glance to the environment and realize the importance of the environment. I sound like a real environmentalist now, you know, so, but yeah, the impact of climate change is real. One of the scientific publications I often quote is, I think in a space of 20 years, a butterfly species in Spain, it used to occur up to a certain level on a mountain. So from the tip to the bottom to a certain level on a mountaintop. And because of climate change in 20 years, that species is now occurring 200 meters up from where it used to occur 20 years ago. So climate change is real. Let's see what we can do. Let's support the ventures about climate change. And I think the other thing is as well, educate yourself, you know, just also don't just read and believe. And the first thing that crosses your path and, you know, which explains that, you know, this has happened now, stop doing this is bad, you know, go do your own research, use Google to your advantage. It's such an amazing tool. I don't know what life was like before Google and the internet. So yeah, but yeah, otherwise, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having us. It's a huge privilege. I'm also thanking on behalf of Eugene Trotsky, co-founder. I must say I just want to thank one of the veterinarians, Dr. Rita Piso from Mangata Veterinary Services. She's been really one of the principal members and people involved with what our snare removal operations. And we're going to be working with her in the future. You know, she's got 8 years experience in the wildlife veterinary industry. Down to the Wire, as I mentioned, go and have a look at, it's down with the number 2, the Wire. Go and check them out on Instagram. They make these really cool bangles and jewelry from snares. So it's jewelry with a story behind it. But yeah, thanks for having us. It's been a huge privilege. And any questions, you know, you're welcome to email us at phalaborwaheritage.info@gmail.com. And we'll try and help you, even if it's an identification of an alien exotic plant or an animal. You're welcome to send it through, and we'll try and help you out.
Can I get you to say that email address one more time? That was a mouthful.
Yeah. So that's phalaborwaheritage.info@gmail.com.
And if you're not sure, guys, the link to the Facebook page is in the video description below, so check that out.
Yeah.
Rion,
you can also send us a message there.
Yeah, Rion, thanks a lot. It's been a delight having you on the channel today. Conservation, as you and I have talked about, is something near and dear to my heart. I'm always of the opinion, don't tinkle in your own backyard. You need to be a good steward of the environment. Otherwise, there's nothing left for your patrimony or yourself if you do enough damage in your lifetime. So I really appreciate having you on. You're my second conservation guest. My first was Major General Johan Jooste, who was on here last month, and we talked about anti-poaching operations and things he did with the Wildlife Service in South Africa, the Park Service. But thank you for coming on. I'll extend an open invitation. Maybe come back later on after some new developments with Phalaborwa. We can hear some exciting news. Yeah. And you're welcome to come back. And your lurking Trusky wildlife photography mate is also welcome to join us if he'd like.
Yeah, no, I think I will definitely put him on and put his face on the camera next time. He's not going to catch me again with this, but no, it's been, jokes aside, it's been nice. It's been a privilege. Thank you very much. We've got quite a bit of developments down the pipeline, as I mentioned, baboon monitoring projects starting up, learning from others, employing other parts of South Africa where there has been issues and stuff. So yeah, the project has been snowballing quite a bit over the last couple of months, but we're excited. We're really happy about it. It's our passion, so we can't ever call it work, even if it was.
Interesting. Sorry, I was just looking at the chat. Blues Pixie is saying, Chris Wyatt, damn, I missed the only conservation she ever had. Well, we had General Yosta on here, and now we've got, an ecologist, but involved in conservation. We've got Rion here. So it's a theme that's near and dear to my heart. I just don't know a lot of people in the field in Africa. So that circle is expanding now, thanks to you guys. So we'll get more folks on here. But thanks a lot, Rion. We'll get you back on here. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, although it ought to be getting dark there if it's not already dark by now. But you couldn't tell that from the screen behind you. Anyway. All right, Rion, thanks a lot. We'll say goodbye to you. I'm going to put you in the waiting room here, and we'll catch you later on. I'm going to close out the show, okay? Have a good one, Rion.
Cool. Cheers. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Okay, folks. Wow, that looks kind of weird. Let me fix that real quick. Where's it at? Okay, here we go. I got to fix this real quick. Zoom all participants. There we go. Now we're back. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in on a Sunday. I hope that you found this an interesting and informative session. I really appreciate my guest, Rion Lerm, from coming on from the Phalaborwa Natural Heritage Foundation as we talk about conservation and ecology. As he mentioned, he's on the edge of Kruger National Park there in South Africa, folks. To all those who contribute to the chat, thank you very much. For the new channel member, thank you so much for that. It was a Fiona, I think, became a member. And for the super chats, thank you guys for that as well. I'll do a Stray Voltage Night Owls edition later today at 9:35 South Africa time, at 3:35 Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S., so a little over 2 hours from now, and we can catch up on things. To the trolls who came to the channel, why don't you take your business elsewhere? Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that. It has cost us a few viewers on the channel from time to time. A few reliable and friendly viewers on the channel have stopped coming back because of it, hence the reason for getting moderators more involved in cleaning up the chat. This is not Tinder. If you want to talk and chat up people, go elsewhere. If you want to come here and cause havoc, this is the wrong channel for that. If you want to contribute to a cogent conversation. But the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is that what this means is that the channel has traction and that it's got attention. If people have the time to sit around and waste and harass other people, then clearly the channel is annoying people because it's open discourse and conversation. So there you go. But yeah, so those of you who misbehaved, please take your misbehaving elsewhere. Anyway, so we do appreciate the chat and do appreciate the subscriptions and the members of the channel and for the following of the channel. So thank you so much for that, ladies and gentlemen. I will be back, again, as I said, a little bit later. We'll do another stream. Anybody who felt they were unfairly removed from the chat or removed from the channel can send me an email. Go to the About tab on my channel and send me an email, and I'll look at the chat and I'll consider whether you were treated unfairly or not. I have brought people back to the channel whom I felt were treated unfairly. It actually cost me a moderator one time, but that's okay because the moderator overreacted and I brought a person back. But what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, is that people are trying my good nature and my good patience, intentionally trying to be difficult on the channel and causing all sorts of problems. Now, that's not everybody who gets a timeout. Even members, paying members, have been given a timeout on occasion for being too cheeky at times. The conversation is not for people to sit around and have a go at each other. It's to contribute to the conversation, ask questions, and you can chat with each other if you like. But it's really not a dating service. It's also not a place to attack other people and be abusive. Anyway, folks, I did a video before we did the stream. I premiered it on mask bullying and mask zealots. Please feel free to check that video out. It's about 10, 13 minutes long, something like that. And I saved my thoughts on mask until the end because I know that a lot of people will simply see the title and give me a dislike or start watching it and be angry because I mentioned marijuana smoking, which I don't like. Instead of watching the whole video in which I make it clear at the end that I'm not anti-mask, I'm not pro-mask. I'm just anti-bullying and stigmatization of people. Anyway, so that's what that video is about. So thanks for tuning in, folks. I really appreciate your patronage. And I will be back on in a couple of hours. So thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed this stream. Rion was a fantastic guest, as pretty much every guest on here has been pretty cool. This went really well. I like this background. That was a pretty impressive background there. Also gave us the occasion to talk about invasive species, which was kind of cool to talk about. So I enjoyed that. Folks, I'm going to go ahead and close out here in just a second, and I want to wish you all a pleasant evening or afternoon, depending where you're at. tomorrow if you're in Japan, and then a pleasant tomorrow already. And we'll be back in a little while. So thanks a lot, and have a good one, folks.